The mask we wear is not something we choose consciously. It's a survival mechanism born of deep vulnerability. From the moment we are thrust into the world, we are conditioned to present a version of ourselves that is acceptable, pleasing, and worthy of love. The mask becomes the armor that shields us from the pain of rejection, criticism, and failure. It's a reflection of the expectations placed on us by society, our families, and even our own deepest fears. We slip into the mask, and before we realize it, it becomes us. The more we wear it, the more it fuses to our face, until we forget who we were before it took root. The silent prison of the mask is not just a metaphor. It's a reality that many live, suffocating quietly beneath layers of falsehood. In the beginning, the mask serves its purpose. It keeps us safe, hides our insecurities, and enables us to fit in. But over time, something insidious happens. The mask evolves from a protective shield to an identity of its own. We begin to believe that the mask is us. The person behind it becomes a distant memory, a shadow buried beneath the polished persona we present to the world. The mask tells us what we should feel, how we should act, and who we should be. We are no longer individuals, we are a carefully constructed image. The mask traps us in a loop of validation, desperately seeking approval from others, all the while losing touch with the raw, authentic self we once knew. Carl Jung powerfully said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But how can we become who we truly are when we are shackled by a false identity?" The silent prison of the mask is not just a barrier between us and the world. It's a wall that separates us from our deepest truth. Behind the mask lies the soul yearning to be seen, heard, and understood. Yet we are so entangled in the illusion of who we think we should be that we forget the power of simply being. The journey of self-liberation begins with the painful realization that the mask is not the truth. The person beneath it is waiting to break free, to breathe again, to reclaim the power of authenticity. The real battle is not with the world outside, but with the false self we have created. It is only when we remove the mask that we can finally begin to live fully and truthfully. Begins the birth of the persona. The birth of the persona begins the moment we feel the first sting of rejection or fear of not being enough. It starts as a defense, a way to protect the fragile, tender parts of ourselves that we aren't ready to expose to the world. The persona is born out of necessity, a shield forged in the heat of societal expectations, family pressures, and the need to belong. It is the mask we wear to survive, to fit in, and to shield ourselves from the pain of feeling invisible or inadequate. In the beginning, the persona is simply a tool, a role we play to avoid being rejected, misunderstood, or unworthy of love. But over time, the lines blur, and we begin to mistake the mask for our true self. Jung explains, "The persona is that which in reality one is not, but which one's well as others think one is." The mask starts as an act, a role we adopt to gain approval or avoid criticism. It is a careful performance, meticulously crafted to meet the world's expectations. What we don't realize is that with each passing day, we become more and more invested in the act. What was once a survival mechanism now becomes the only way we know how to exist. We begin to lose touch with the raw, unfiltered parts of ourselves that are too vulnerable, too raw, too real to expose. The persona is safe. It's what we've learned to be. The birth of the persona is the moment we forget who we were before the mask took hold. We forget that we were once free, untainted, and whole. The mask gives us a sense of control, but in reality, it enslaves us. The more we wear it, the further we drift from the truth of who we are. The tragic irony is that in trying to protect ourselves, we lose the essence of ourselves. The false self is a shield against the world. The false self is a fortress built from the very wounds we wish to hide. It is a shield constructed from fear. Fear of rejection, fear of not being enough, fear of being seen in our most vulnerable, imperfect state. The false self is born out of our deepest insecurities, our desperate need for validation, and the belief that we are not worthy unless we conform to the world's rigid standards. At first, it feels like protection, like a comforting barrier that keeps us safe from the cruelty of the outside world. But over time, this shield becomes our prison. We begin to believe that this false self, this mask of perfection, confidence, and control, is all there is. We become so entangled in the lie that we forget who we were before the facade took over. Jung's words ring out in the silence of our struggle. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, and yet, this is the very thing we refuse to do. We cannot bear to look at the truth of who we are, messy, flawed, incomplete, so we construct the false self as a barrier between the world and the raw parts of our soul. The false self wears the mask of confidence, of success, of the perfect life, but underneath, it is fragile. Fragile enough to crumble at the slightest crack in its armor. This false self is an illusion, a desperate attempt to control a world that is uncontrollable. It is the mask we wear to avoid the pain of vulnerability, to avoid confronting the shadow within. But in the process, we bury the truth, the very essence of our soul under layers of deceit. The deeper we bury ourselves beneath the false self, the further we drift from the raw, powerful force that lies within. And yet the cost of this survival is high. The cost is our very humanity, living behind the mask, the life you never chose. Living behind the mask is a slow, soul-crushing erosion of the person you were meant to be. It's a life built on lies, a series of carefully constructed facades, each one designed to keep you safe from the world's judgment and from the truth of your own vulnerability. At first, the mask feels like protection, a way to shield the raw, tender parts of yourself from the harshness of a world that doesn't always understand. But what begins as an act of survival soon becomes the only way you know how to live. The mask becomes your reality, and the person beneath it becomes a distant, forgotten memory. Carl Jung's words echo like a haunting truth. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and yet, behind the mask, you are not living the life you were meant to live. You are living a lie. Every day, you wake up and perform the role you've convinced yourself is your truth, the perfect, polished version of yourself, shaped by expectations, by society, by the people you think you must please. The real you, the messy, imperfect, emotional you, is hidden deep beneath layers of armor. You may fool the world, but you cannot fool the soul. And so, you go through the motions of a life that feels increasingly hollow, a life that you never consciously chose. Every step, every decision, every interaction is tainted by the mask. You are trapped in a cycle of pleasing others, of seeking validation, and all the while the truth inside of you withers, suffocated by your own fear. The more you live behind the mask, the further you drift from the person you were meant to be. And the more you lose yourself, the more you wonder if you can ever truly find your way back, or if you've already lost everything that ever meant. The struggle for validation, seeking approval in a hollow world. The struggle for validation is the quiet, insidious battle that gnaws at the very core of our being. It is the constant, relentless need to prove our worth to a world that will never truly see us, not as we are, but as we wish to be seen. It is the hunger for approval, the desperate longing for recognition, and the terrifying fear of being ignored or cast aside. We shape ourselves to fit the mold others expect of us, sacrificing our authenticity in exchange for a fleeting sense of belonging. The more we seek approval, the more we are consumed by the belief that we are nothing without it. We are trapped in a paradox. The harder we chase external validation, the further we drift from the truth of who we are. Carl Jung's words ring like a warning. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. And yet, how many of us are bound by the lies we tell ourselves and others about who we are? How many of us bend and twist ourselves into shapes that satisfy the expectations of those around us, only to realize that we no longer recognize the person staring back at us in the mirror? The pursuit of approval becomes a hollow cycle. It feeds us momentarily, a fleeting rush of affirmation, but it is never enough. It never fills the emptiness inside. And the more we chase it, the more we lose ourselves in the process. This hunger for validation is rooted in deep insecurity, a belief that we are not enough as we are. But this quest, this incessant need to be seen, only deepens the void within us. In trying to prove our worth to others, we forget to prove it to ourselves. And in that forgetting, we lose the very essence of who we are, trapped in a never-ending cycle of seeking and never finding. The world cannot fill what is missing inside of us. Only we can do that, but only if we stop seeking validation outside and begin the painful, transformative journey of self-acceptance. The silent suffering, the price of perfection. Perfection is a prison dressed in gold. On the outside it gleams, flawless, admired, applauded. But inside it is hollow, dark, and suffocating. The pursuit of perfection is not driven by love, but by fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. And so, we shape ourselves into what the world wants to see. We silence our pain, numb our imperfections, and wear a smile that conceals the storm. No one sees the cost. No one hears the silent screaming behind the mask. Because perfection doesn't allow for weakness. And in the eyes of the world, to be vulnerable is to be broken. Carl Jung once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Yet perfection leaves no room for pain. It demands suppression. It demands we become statues, polished but lifeless. And in this endless pursuit, we lose the very essence of our humanity. We abandon authenticity for control, connection for performance. Every flaw becomes a threat, every emotion a liability. So we tighten our grip, clench our jaw, and pretend it's all fine. But inside, the soul begins to decay. The most tragic part is that no one sees the cost of this perfection. They see the curated life, the polished words, the flawless image, but not the exhaustion, the anxiety, the slow erosion of self-worth. Perfection is a cruel master. It never rests, never satisfies, never says you are enough. The bar always moves higher, and the pressure grows heavier. In chasing perfection, we bury our most honest self. We lose touch with what is real. And one day we wake up in a life that looks beautiful on the outside but feels dead on the inside. That is the price of perfection. The quiet death of the soul behind the silence. The lie you believe, identifying with the mask. The most dangerous lies are the ones we tell ourselves, and the most devastating is this. This mask is who I am. At some point, we stop pretending and start believing. The role we created to protect ourselves becomes the identity we cling to. We no longer wear the mask, we become it. We forget there was ever a self before the performance, a soul behind the script. This is not just self-deception. It is psychological exile. We banish our truest self into silence, and in its place we worship the image the world approves of. Obedient, polished, numb, Carl Jung said. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And so, the mask, once a conscious choice, becomes an unconscious identity. We begin to live a life that is not ours, make choices we don't feel, chase dreams we don't believe in. We smile when we want to scream. We agree when our soul rebels. And worst of all, we convince ourselves this is who we really are. But beneath that mask is a neglected truth, raw, wild, and aching to be seen. The tragedy of identifying with the mask is not just that we fool the world, it's that we fool ourselves. We mistake validation for love, applause for meaning, and silence for peace. But deep within, the soul whispers that something is wrong. We feel the tension, we feel the fracture, we feel the haunting emptiness of a life lived in distortion. And still, we cling to the mask, afraid that without it there will be nothing left. But that is the lie. The mask is the illusion. The truth, though buried, is not dead. It waits, bruised, forgotten, but alive. for the moment we are brave enough to remember who we truly are. The crushing weight when the mask becomes your identity. The most agonizing truth is this: the mask, once a choice, becomes a sentence. You wore it to survive, to belong, to be loved, to feel safe. But over time, you forgot where the mask ended and where you began. Now it clings to you like a second skin, suffocating every part of you that once felt real. You smile on cue, say what's expected, and play the role flawlessly. On the surface, everything looks perfect, but beneath that surface is a quiet collapse. You are tired, not just physically, but spiritually, because living as someone you're not is the heaviest burden a soul can carry. Carl Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And so, we bury the truth. We run from the silence, distract ourselves with perfection, validation, noise, anything but the raw confrontation with our real self. But the mask begins to rot from the inside. And with every day that passes, you feel it, that gnawing sense of alienation, of being a stranger in your own life. You look in the mirror and see someone you've built, not someone you are. And that realization is terrifying. The crushing weight is not from others, it's from within. The burden of constantly suppressing your real thoughts, your real fears, your raw emotions, it corrodes you, slowly, silently. You laugh while your soul screams. You succeed while feeling hollow. You connect, yet always feel alone, because no one sees the real you. How could they? Even you have forgotten. But the soul cannot be silenced forever. One day it will rise, in anxiety, in rage, in a quiet breakdown, demanding to be heard. And in that moment you'll realize the most important truth. The mask may have protected you, but it's also what's been killing you. Breaking the chains, the painful journey to authenticity. Breaking free from the mask is not a triumphant burst of light. It is a violent unraveling. It is the collapse of everything you once thought you were, the roles you played, the persona you crafted, the carefully constructed image you clung to. All of it begins to shatter under the weight of your truth. This is not enlightenment. This is death before rebirth, because to reclaim your authenticity, you must first grieve the false self you lived as for years, and that grief is brutal. Carl Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. To awaken is to bleed, to face the lies you've told yourself, the moments you abandoned your soul just to be accepted, the years spent living for someone else's approval. You begin to realize that the life you built was never truly yours. And when the mask falls, so does your sense of identity. The illusion burns, and in its ashes, you're left with rawness. Unguarded, terrified, and painfully alive. This journey is not romantic. It is lonely. It is full of nights where you question everything. Your worth, your choices, your very existence. You will want to return to the mask. You will crave its safety. But there is no going back. Once the soul begins to stir, it will no longer be silent. Authenticity isn't loud. It's not a performance. It's quiet. It's the trembling voice that finally says, "This is me." It's the courage to be misunderstood, to be imperfect, to be real. And though it will break you, it will also free you. Because what awaits on the other side of that pain isn't perfection. It's wholeness. It's the reunion with the self you buried long ago. That is the beginning of everything true. The power of the unmasked self. The moment the mask falls is not a celebration, it is a reckoning. You stand there, exposed, stripped of your armor, trembling in the rawness of who you really are. There is no applause, no grand arrival, only silence. The silence of meeting yourself for the first time. And it's terrifying, because for so long you were a stranger to your own soul. You lived for the image, for approval, for survival. But now, with the illusion shattered, you see the truth. The self you buried never died. It waited, patiently, painfully, for your return. Carl Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And yet, to arrive at that place, you must first lose everything that is not you. You must burn through the layers of deception, conditioning, and fear. You must walk through the ruins of your former self, not with pride but with reverence, because every broken piece was part of your becoming. The power of the unmasked self is not in perfection, it is in honesty. In the trembling voice that speaks even when it shakes, in the eyes that no longer hide, in the scars you no longer apologize for. This self does not seek to impress, it seeks to connect, to love deeply, to feel fully, to live truthfully. It is the self that knows pain but is no longer ruled by it. It is the self that carries wounds but no longer hides them. To be unmasked is to be whole, to be seen, truly seen, and to remain standing. That is power, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that liberates, the kind that whispers, "I am no longer afraid to be myself." And in that whisper, your soul comes home.